Welcome to Cyber Savvy. This podcast was created by DTC to bring awareness, mitigation, and response to cybersecurity threats companies and organizations face daily. Be prepared. Be cyber savvy. Good morning, afternoon, and evening, wherever you might be listening to this podcast. I'm Andrew Rose, your host for the DTC Cyber Savvy podcast. We invite subject matter experts to join us to offer us new and novel ways to protect your organization against the threat of cyber thieves and other malcontents. A little bit about who DTC is. For decades, we've been protecting the computers and networks of our clients, particularly in the specialty medical and dental fields. We are known not only for being the best at what we do, but also for how nice our staff is. And this is not an accident. We have found that attitude does a lot more than just to ensure for happy customers. It also helps an organization become more resilient in the face of persistent cyber threats. For those of you who listened to some of our prior podcasts with Monica Smith talking about the just culture philosophy, you'll understand why it's so important to have a secure and safe workplace where people feel empowered to offer any type of security laws or breaches or mistakes in the organization so the organization can correct those rather than blaming the individuals. Today, we've invited Monica Smith back, and we have a very special guest today. Pam Villeneuve has cleared her schedule so she can talk to us as well, and I'm so excited and eager to have both of these ladies here on our show today. So, Monica, would you introduce yourself, talk a little bit about your role, and as well as the collaboration that you have in your partnership with Pam?
Sure thing. Thanks for having me back. So, as you mentioned, my name is Monica Smith, and I have a couple of roles. I serve as Chief Flourishing Officer at DTC. And in that role, I'm really primarily focused on continuing to build and foster a culture of well-being, connection, safety, and trust, which we'll talk more about. Also, building out our continuous learning efforts as an organization and supporting performance and learning and development for the employees. I also, outside of DTC, have a private coaching practice called the Clear Mind Project, where I work with individuals and couples around addiction, intimacy, communication, well-being, resilience, all of that good stuff. So that's me. And I also kind of want to jump in and celebrate my fabulous partner, Pam, who serves as our Chief Heart Officer at DTC. And I'll let her talk about what she does also outside of DTC as well. But really fortunate to have her as a strategic partner here. One of the things that we're focused on, in particular, our approach to learning and development has to do with building emotional intelligence that includes awareness of heart and gut intelligence, not just mind intelligence. And so Pam really brings her outside expertise about the body and the heart to facilitate an experiential learning curriculum here. So when we do skill building quarterly as a company, Pam facilitates experiential learning exercises that really activate lessons that we've already learned with our mind, maybe principles that we already learned with our mind, and brings them into the heart and the gut and into the body. So that's my little preview of Pam. And I'll let Pam kind of chime in more about her role outside of DTC and then anything that you want to add that I missed.
Thanks, Monica. Yeah, I'm the formal title here is Chief Heart Officer. So I'm definitely very versed and focused on the heart and the emotions of the human. My outside work is the Heart of Pleasure Project. And in that work with women and couples and groups, I am an intimacy and somatic sex mentor, taking folks into their bodies and really getting to know who they are from that place. And it's a beautiful journey. So yes, Monica has expressed what we do here in our skill building. I creatively craft exercises and experiential experiences for all of the folks here to partake in and give them more awareness of who they are so we can be the best humans we can be when we show up every day.
That is unbelievable. I mean, the two of you together, it's like having two unicorns in the same place. The amount of experience you have and how much you can share, and also just how valuable it is for what you do have to share. I want to very quickly comment because science is starting to prove now too the connection between the brain and the gut and the help, and how we are not just driven. We talked about emotional intelligence. I think that's just a wonderful topic anyway. But Monica, I like how we've connected that dot back to the heart and to the gut and to the health. I hadn't thought about that, but it's so crystal clear that that's the truth there that we need to focus on. Before we really get into this, Monica, would you and Pam talk about some of the goals that you have for DTC and maybe the wider world and the work that you do?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'll start and Pam can chime in as usual with anything I miss. So one of the big pieces that we really share as part of this collaboration, of course, in conjunction with our CEO's priorities, is focusing on relationships and connection as a strategic priority of the organization. And of course, what goes along with that is that we are dedicating intentional resources and time to focus on prioritizing how we're relating to each other, ourselves, each other, our clients, the community, how we're making a bigger impact. So I think that Pam and I both share the goal of becoming a relationship driven by relationships and connection. And kind of what goes along with that is that we are building trust and safety as part of a foundation. And I'll probably come back to this a little bit later on with some of the other topics we get into. But if you're familiar, there's a great book and model out there, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. There's a great pyramid, anybody can Google it, but the very foundation of that pyramid is trust. So I think from both of our perspective, what we're trying to achieve is that sort of trust and relational safety at the bottom, because we know that if we have that, we can get to all the other things. We can get to the results we're really driving at, from standards of quality, excellence, all the other strategic priorities we have. But we know that trust and safety is a foundation. So that's a big piece of our goals, is really investing resources and time into building that safety, that trust, the relationships, dialogue, ability to feel uncomfortable together, as we've talked about. So I think that's my vision. I know you can chime in.
And I think for me to add to this trust and safety is each individual has to let it begin with them. And so that becomes the great journey for every human being that's working here is, can you go into you and learn how to cultivate safety within yourself, and then be able to bring that in your interactions with other, whether it's other fellow workers, whether it's leadership, whether it's clients. So that is part of leadership, is getting responsible with oneself and being able to lead oneself, finding those places of safety and trusting in your own body, in your own abilities, in your own worth. That's where it begins. It begins right there. And so that's kind of what all of our mission is to meet each individual where they are and bring them to moving forward in their evolution of understanding who they are. And that's going to start to create that safety and ability to create relationship.
Yeah, and I'll just add on to that. So 2 things. One, as Pam mentioned, letting it begin with us. That includes leadership. To your point, that includes the senior leaders of any organization, because if it's not beginning there and it's not being modeled, we know how that goes. That's actually eroding trust. So Pam and I recently facilitated a half-day session with our CEO and our new Chief Operating Officer to walk them through a values boot camp and to have some experiential exercises with them to let it begin with us. All 4 participated in that as participants to really keep modeling that and honoring that commitment. And all of this with the ultimate goal to have a great impact with our clients and in the community. Excellence, high standards of excellence, high quality experience, great client relationships, great understanding and empathy. We want to continue to build and get to all those places. And we know that this is the foundation we need to get there.
Wow. What a frame that was. That's wonderful. Now, DTC is in an exceptional place right now, and it's going to an exceptional place. Can the 2 of you talk a little bit about what it was like when you got here, some of the changes that you've seen due to your efforts, and maybe a few of the things that you've got on the horizon that you want to move towards now that you've got that foundational piece in place?
Yeah, I think there have been so many changes. It's hard to even, I would have to do a mental brainstorm. But first of all, we've seen a lot of individuals, kind of to Pam's point, we've seen a lot of individual growth and development and evolution. We've seen that in the form of taking on increasing complexity of scope and responsibilities. That's one way that you see growth and development. We've seen more people using their voice. We've seen a lot more engagement in, I would say, cross-department, cross-functional meetings that have been created or dialogue that has been created. One example is historically the approach to all hands days. And first of all, there are more all hands days now than there were. We do that quarterly now as an organization to come together more often in one place for a full day. And the approach used to be by department, so individual meetings by department, whereas now we mix everything. So while our departments have their individual coordination meetings for tasks, but when it comes to skill building, when it comes to experiential exercises, when it comes to any kind of group setting, we are mixing every time because we've really learned and want to have that relational cross-functional collaboration. I think it's strengthened relationships. I think we've gotten better at having hard conversations. That is absolutely a work in progress. We're, as Pam said, we're trying to meet everyone where they are, and that's going to be a work in progress. But I think we've been able to have hard and uncomfortable conversations. We've been able to challenge each other more. We've seen some of the exercises that Pam facilitates. We've seen some deeper insights being generated from some of those exercises, kind of getting beyond that surface level. New processes, I mean, I could keep going. You know how I am. I can ramble for a while, as I mentioned earlier.
Well, the one you led with, the employees using their voice. I mean, it seems so inconsequential, but that for me is one of the gem in that piece, that they feel safe enough to use their voice. Pam, do you want to add to that?
I do. I think I want to talk about one particular exercise that we've incorporated into all of our gatherings, and that is called a dyad. So we're really working on contact with the other person that we're interchanging with, and it's a script, but we're working on really seeing them and hearing them and listening to understand. We don't have to agree. We just are practicing listening to understand. And by doing that as an exercise, what I notice is people are taking little pieces of that exercise script and are able to inject them into their interfacings with others along their days, whether it's here at work or at home. And really, it's beneficial to humanity in that regard. I think because our overall big culture is moving so fast, we've missed this place of really listening to someone to understand. So that's one of the things that we've noticed. People are having some successes in their interchanges because they've been able to apply some of that was practiced in how they interface with another, which is fascinating, right? It's beautiful.
I was going to say that is beautiful, and kind of goes back to something you said before, is meeting people where they are. And you're listening to understand, you're not listening to change their mind. You just want to understand where they are. And then now you've established that commonality. That's genius.
Yes. And I think I'll add, one of our values is authenticity. So I want to be fully authentic. We have seen more voices and we know we want more. We're always trying to learn and evolve our approaches. We ask for feedback. We want everybody to get to the point where they feel like they can give completely open feedback, constructive feedback. It's a work in progress. And what we're always trying to do, and we have every time Pam and I do an exercise together or we have an event, we sit down with our CEO and now our Chief Operating Officer, and we debrief and we do an after action review and we do lessons learned. We gather in feedback. So we're trying to improve every time so that we can understand. We're seeking to understand too, where are we hitting the mark in terms of creating safety and openness, and where are we missing the mark? Who are we still not hearing from, or where does there still seem to be a disconnect? And one thing we're trying to do is, if we identify that, we're trying to act on it sooner, not let it fester, not let it go, not see what happens, but really if we need to call an impromptu, we call an impromptu. We have a dialogue, and we have to model curiosity, which is listening to understand, not to change where someone is, but to try to understand where we're all coming from. And that's really what we want to continue to get to. And the challenge for all of us as humans, regardless of whether it's at work or at home or anything, is this relationship between risk and trust. And because we have the responsibility to create trust through consistency, through offering, through creating safety, but somebody else has to be willing to take the risk to step into that space. And it's the shared responsibility. So that's what we're always dancing in. Like, are we creating enough safety? Are other people taking the risk? How do we get there? So it's always evolving. We're just as much in the learning process for sure as everyone else here.
Yeah.
Oh boy, spoken like a pro. I love that. Uh, So I'm sitting here and I can think of pretty much every organization needs the two of you there. Every household needs the two of you there. And I'm sure our listeners are now starting to think, boy, do I need them there? What are some key indicators that someone really needs to take a hard look at what's happening? Is it attrition? I mean, what are some of those signals that these organizational leaders should be looking for?
Yeah, it's actually interesting you mentioned attrition because we're working right now here on refining a scorecard of sorts of how are we measuring success. And one of the things that I think is important for everyone to be on the lookout, even more than attrition, is regrettable attrition. Because what we want for every human is to be exactly where they need to be in a place that lights them up, in a role that works for their personality. And that's good for the company, that's good for the person. Sometimes that means a person moves on because that's right for them and that's right for the company. So it's really about regrettable attrition. It's about when there is a person who was a good fit, had that potential, and still ends up leaving, what happened? So if there is a trend of regrettable attrition, I would say if there aren't a lot of questions being asked, if the meetings kind of feel stale, there's not a lot of dialogue, really, if there isn't anybody challenging anything, that's another thing to look at. Do employees have a mindset of collective results? So this is also part of that 5 dysfunctions of a team model, where is it very individual based, meaning I'm only focused on my own performance, I'm not thinking about my team, protecting myself, it's a very self-protective closed, or do people see their employees thinking about their team, employees supporting each other, having each other's backs? So those are some of the more relational pieces, but I would say seeing challenges and questions and feedback in meetings, supporting each other. Yeah, regrettable attrition for sure. Certainly performance. I mean, the bottom line is at some point in time, and it might take a while, but at some point in time, performance does tend to decline when there isn't trust and safety because it can only sustain itself for so long. So that's another piece. Do you want to add anything?
I think you covered a lot of territory there. Well done.
Thank you.
Well, for those listeners out there who have heard Monica speak before, she always leaves some brilliant bumper stickers out there. And I want to go back to the modeling curiosity. I think that was such another gem, that understanding someone, but having that true listening to really get to the heart of the matter. I love that. And then the regrettable attrition. I think I'm going to have to steal that one and use that someplace else too. So someone out there is listening and they're like, oh my goodness, I see a couple of these signs in my organization. What's a good start? I mean, obviously they're not going to be able to hire the two of you to come in there and help them out with what they're doing, but what are some things they can do? I know in the past podcasts, we've talked about having a designated disagreeer, someone whose job it is to be that devil's advocate and push back on assumptions. What else would you suggest for our listeners to do to start working down this path?
Yeah, I think that is a great strategy, having a designated disagreeer. There could also be a designated question asker. Like, your entire job is to come up with really good questions in this meeting. If not already happening, I definitely recommend cross-functional or cross-departmental, making, like, really looking to integrate as many meetings or events as possible to kind of mix that up. Also, there can, in not all cases, but, and it depends obviously on the organizational size, can make things challenging sometimes, but because it can tend to be hierarchical, I have a hard time saying that word, sometimes there's a disconnect because leaders are only hearing from the managers that are directly reporting to them. So I would say mixing up who you're hearing from and who you're engaging with. So people could do listening tours where they make an intentional point of setting some meetings without any other leadership in the room and just give people the space to really express, where are you at with this stuff? Do we have values? Can anybody name them? What do they mean to you? Do they mean anything to you? Do they align with your personal values? How do you see them showing up day to day? I think making time and space for those conversations and then hearing from people you don't normally hear from, I think is an important one as well.
I think to add to that, I would go back to my premise, which is the individual. So if you have leaders that are noticing these trends in their company and they're concerned, I would look within first and say, hey, how can I grow personally? Like, what does that look like for me? Can I reach beyond and ask for help? That's hard for us to do in this American culture. We've all been conditioned to be fiercely independent. We're not asking for help. I can do it myself, right? But I think as leaders, if we can get down into the heart of who we are and model that and do our own personal growth, you're going to find that that ripple effect starts to occur. That those below you will start to feel that and be infused by that. And that also is a place where someone can begin. You can let it begin with you in that way, personally.
And Pam, that's so critical because you're speaking here. I'm kind of envisioning these meetings. Whenever a leader comes in the room, there is an entirely different dynamic. People, before they speak,
Right.
will look at the leader to see if there's a facial expression or something like that. Can you just dig a little bit more deeper? What are some other things that a leader could do, whether they're actions or non-actions, that would put either people at comfort so they're eliciting the type of information they need to get to run an effective organization?
I would say that every leader that's in a high position should have a coach of some sort, a coach or mentor that they can turn to and have deep conversation with when they have their own troubles and their own challenges. Because when you can diffuse that part, then you can step into a meeting with your company and your crew with a clearer, more open place. You're a more open conduit. You're more safe. We're not carrying all that energy, that charge, as Sachin Raja would talk about.
Yeah.
So he's a big supporter of every leader should have a mentor or coach as well, to really have that person to support you.
I absolutely agree. I would add, again, I'll throw a recovery bumper sticker quote out there since Andrew, you said that that's what I do. And I have it as a post-it note on my computer at home because it's something I need to remind myself of every day. To Pam's point, compulsive self-reliance does not equal recovery. So you can switch out recovery to anything. Compulsive self-reliance does not equal success, does not equal transformation, does not equal well-being. So to Pam's point, I completely agree. Every leader should be really thinking about who they have in their life that they can be honest and vulnerable and open with, who can challenge them and help add to their self-reflection and insight and expression so that they can kind of show up as their best selves. Work in progress, though we all are, but show up as our best selves, right? And have that person in our life.
Wow, I'm sitting here thinking out loud, the calm and the balance of a leader who's been through something like that, because the staff senses it. They sense that electricity. So if a leader is coming in there and they're conflicted or they've got something else going on, that will ripple through in a negative way. But Pam, I love your aspect. I wasn't even thinking about the leader's mindset and how balanced they need to be coming to those meetings so the others won't feed off of that negativity. Genius. So, Monica, you are now the de facto expert on just culture, and I appreciate all the work that you've done in just culture. But the fact that DTC is an example of what this looks like as a just culture gets implemented, would you give our listeners a little bit of an overview of what just culture is in case they're just picking up this podcast as their first one?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and it's funny, I don't have all my many notes in front of me from those original conversations, but I think the gist that I took away, and I think in the first podcast that I was able to join, I was sharing the favorite thing I read about it was that it was like a self-improving system based on trust and safety, engagement, openness. So I would say it's really an environment that is safe and trusting and that focuses on the collective, the system, the health of the system, and holds kind of the system responsible for creating an environment where every individual can feel safe, acknowledging mistakes. And of course, that term has been really used in a lot of these industries where there are these life or death threats. Aviation, I know, is the one, right? The big one that pops out, but really holding the system responsible for creating an environment where a person can speak up and say, I see a risk, I made a mistake, this is an issue, without fear of blame, retribution, punishment. Not that there won't be fear as a human, because there's always going to be fear. Fear is a passenger, but that there has been enough experience and enough safety created where individuals can speak up. And I think what that creates is, as a result, not only is it about people being able to open up about mistakes, it allows for a culture that is focused on learning and development and continuous improvement. And that hopefully operates as that self-improving system is about moving as a unit, focusing on the collective. And that is going to get at identifying risks sooner, more quickly, coming up with better solutions, not repeating the same old mistakes over and over again. I would summarize it by saying a safe and trusting culture that allows people to have a learning and growth mindset, which involves taking risks of being open about what they don't know or mistakes they've made.
Very good.
Thank you.
And feeling safe to do so. And we haven't really spoken it out loud, but a lot of what we're discussing here is also General McChrystal's team of teams. That would be an interesting podcast
Yes.
to go over how an organization
be.
then functions as an entity itself. And one of your bumper stickers, fear is a passenger. I'm going to make a note of that one too. These are wonderful. So Pam and Monica, in addition to just culture, what are some other philosophies that you've introduced into DTC and with great effect, or ones that you're working on right now that you assume will have great effect?
Well, one, and this is very well known out there, we use Daniel Goleman's model of emotional intelligence, which is really self-awareness, self-regulation. I think he uses self-management, but I use self-regulation, social awareness, and relationship management. So that model of emotional intelligence, I like it because it's the 4 quadrants. It's real simple. We use a lot of principles from the Conscious Leadership Group. They have amazing resources. So anybody can Google Conscious Leadership Group. They're trying to bring, similar to what Pam's expertise is, heart and body awareness, fully conscious awareness, and personal responsibility. Now, they're focused on conscious leaders, but their materials apply to every person. And it's all about helping to bring this, our whole person, back into the equation. So they talk about feelings expression. Where do you feel it in your body? What sound does it want to make? These are the kinds of things that Pam helps us bring to the table. So that's another one that is big on our list of resources. And as Pam mentioned, I know she has Sachin training in accelerated evolution. So there's some tools, principles from that as well.
Yeah, I'm really about the emotions and what sensations are we feeling in the body. Those are the guideposts. And we live in a big culture. As Brene Brown says, we're all wanting to numb out and not feel. Eat another donut, drink another beer, work really hard, exercise till you drop so you don't feel anything. And the beauty of the human is to have that. And those are there for us to guide us in our evolution, as Sachin said. A lot of the processes that he's created over 25 years, they deal with the 4 elements: thought, image, body sensation, and emotion. Those are the 4 elements that make up our reality. And so if we can get in touch with emotions and body sensation, those can be such big helpers for us to know how to navigate what we have to navigate on a given time or day. Like you said, walking into a big meeting. Oh, my heart's like doing this in my chest, right? And I'm not sure. What do I do? What do I do? Oh, this is something. Breath. I can breathe. And I can down regulate my nervous system so that I can walk into that meeting and can deliver the content. So my body's not taking over that fight or flight thing. And my mind is able to deliver the content. This is kind of like where we need to go. We talk to our tech people, they're on the phones all the time with clients, right? Sometimes you're going to have a client who's belligerent and is beside themselves and they're all worked up. And how are you going to be with that? Well, you're feeling that too, because we're humans. We feel one another, right? So how are you going to, you feel it in your body, your armpits start sweating. Dr. Smith is yelling at you on the phone. Your armpits are sweating. Oh my gosh, my armpits are sweating. Okay, I need to breathe here.
Mm-hmm.
I need to sit and feel my bones in the chair, right? And so I can calmly respond to Dr. Smith in a diplomatic, compassionate way and listen to understand. So our bodies aren't just a machine that is here. It's there for a purpose to guide us in how we interface. So yes, I gave a lot of explanation there.
No, that was good. That was good. And to Pam's point, we do skill building regularly here, and we had several months focused specifically on customer service and customer experience. And we talked specifically in those sessions about you can't possibly deliver a good customer experience if you are not able to be self-aware and self-regulate. You're not aware of what is going on in your body and your humanness and your emotions, because everything is relational in customer service and customer experience. So how can we build the skills of being aware of what's going on, what we're feeling, and then what do we need to do with that to regulate so that we can show up exactly the way that we want to? And we're all going to do it imperfectly.
And we're not just talking about leaders. Every one of us is a leader. Every single person on the planet is a leader. And can we learn how to lead ourselves first, right? And then we're able to help lead others from that place. So this body stuff is really a helpful tool for that.
So, Pam, DTC is filled with engineers. They do highly technical stuff. We're making computer systems run. We're making dental office equipment talk to their software. Yet you are an artist and a creative and so integral to DTC's success. Can you talk to me a little about how the traits of you being an artist and with a creative mindset have benefited DTC and guided your work there?
Oh, wow.
I can talk
Okay,
about that, but
you can start and then
I
I'll
know you asked Pam the question.
You asked me the question. I'll let Monica.
Yeah, I'll start and then you chime in.
I'm
I
gonna
think,
chime in, yeah.
you know, I can just say for me personally, my comfort zone, as I'm sure anybody who's heard me talk at this point knows, is having my head in a book. And I love that, and that's amazing, but it's also where I can tend to stay there because that's where I'm comfortable. And anything at any extreme is not good. So where Pam's creativity and artistry really helps me so much is I can talk about something I read in a book. I can talk about a concept or a principle. And I'm happy if you sit me in a lecture hall all day long and just be lecture to me. That's my jam. I like that. But how do I translate that to help other humans be multifaceted in how they're learning and to get at their heart and their body? I'm not your gal for that. So I think Pam is able to, you know, when I can talk through a concept of this is what we're trying to achieve, this is what we're trying to learn or talk about, or this is a theme that I see and feel going on, she really can help me get at that in some other angle that I'm not even thinking about, or develop an exercise that I definitely wouldn't be able to think about. I just would talk about it. Let's talk about it. Talk. But she really helps to come at it from a very different angle in a very creative sense. And that is the gift for me because it's not the thing that is my strength.
I think I'm going to add. Yes, there's a lot of technical people here. They work right up here a lot.
In the brain.
And they have this whole other vehicle that they're moving about the cabin with. And that vehicle, every single one of them does have a heart and does have emotion. And so when we do some skill buildings and different things, what I do is I tap into those places. I challenge the status quo, which is up here in the brain, right? It's all going on. I always do the sound effect. Working. So lots of ways. Our environment that we live in here to work in is very sensory oriented. In other words, there's plants, there's aliveness here, the color, right? There's comfort, there's blankets, there's pillows, there's texture. All of that lives here in the environment. And that I had to craft some of that. And I kept driving home to the CEO that this is important. When we've done, for instance, our immersion, I take people into their senses, right? What's your taste? What tantalizes your taste? What sounds work for you? The artist in me is like, look at all the music that's been created in the world. The artists, the musical artists, they have been there to keep us in touch with our humanness, our emotions. Beautiful lyrics and sound to evoke emotion in us, whether it's anger, grief, joy, bliss, ecstaticness, eroticness, all of that stuff is through music and sound. So I've incorporated things like that here in our skill building to really allow folks to tap into some of that. And not everybody's comfortable with that. So I always say to them, you take it in the dose that you can. If you just kind of put one little toe in to start with, so be it. Or if you're not feeling it's a yes right now, you need to honor that. Meet that person where they are and let that unfold. Lots of times when we do stuff in groups, it only takes one human. A rising tide lifts all boats. So that one human jumps in and starts experiencing it. And then before you know it, you see other humans jumping in to experience it. That's the beauty of our humanness, I think.
Yes, and I'm going to add back now. We're going to play tennis. I'm going to add back. So, okay, to Pam's point, challenging the status quo, this is a big one. And this is a big way that Pam's, I think, creativity comes into play. And it is the challenging part is real. I mean, as Pam said, it's uncomfortable for me personally. My safety is in a book. So put me in a corner by myself with a book. Now you're telling me I got to feel things and get in my body, and I'm uncomfortable myself. I get nervous in the exercises. My armpits start to sweat, like all the things. So it is uncomfortable and it is hard. It's not always easy. It's to help everyone make the connection between how does this apply to my job? Why does smelling a piece of chocolate help me do my job better? But to Pam's point, slowing down, focusing on your senses, understanding how your body reacts, all of that contributes to self-awareness and connection with self and self-regulation and then relationship management. But it's hard to make a connection and it's challenging the status quo. It seems like, oh, we should be focusing on metrics right now. But we're listening to music and we're journaling about how it's affecting us. So that we are challenging it, but it's important. We're always striving to help make the connection of why that investment matters. Are we there yet? 100%? No, we're not. We're not there yet with helping to make that connection, but it's a work in progress.
Yeah, definitely. It's been fun.
It's been a fun journey. Yeah.
Some pleasure in it.
All right. Well, this next question then might just answer itself. So, Monica, obviously you've had tremendous life experiences. You could almost pick any corporation in this country to work at, yet you've chosen DTC. What is it that makes you so excited about DTC?
Well, it is a question that answers itself, isn't it? I think, honestly, a big piece of it is having a partnership with Pam for sure. I mean, again, the ability to have a partner who has these complementary strengths and skills makes it a really different kind of adventure and, challenging and rewarding, right? Challenging, meaningful, exciting. I love the fact that it's unique. And I will say, I would not be investing my time and my energy here if we did not have a CEO who was equally invested in where we're trying to go. He, who wasn't curious and really open to evolving with the world, I guess seeing it through the same lens of like, this is where we need to go. So knowing that, because again, I see many situations where it's a little bit more on the lip service side of things rather than like, I'm actually willing to dedicate resources and time to do something with this, right? So that level of commitment and investment, I think, is huge for me. And then lastly, and really most importantly, the people here, right? The employees that we have truly can't say enough about the openness. I mean, we always say, thank you for your open hearts and open minds, right? The openness to experiment with us, to learn and grow with us, to give us that grace, to really jump in and be uncomfortable, to learn and grow. We, our chief operating officer who joined us only recently made a comment about how one of the things that struck him was how much people care here. Like that was one of the first things. So like the fact that we have people who really are caring and have relationships with each other and really want to grow and get better. And that willingness is everything, right? That open-mindedness and that willingness is everything. So I think that is as best as I can possibly summarize it.
Oh, that's wonderful. So, Pam, we've covered a lot of ground here. What questions should I have asked you to get a better sense of who you are and what you want to accomplish?
What question should you ask? I think for me, I just at this juncture in my life, because I'm 64, so I've been on the planet for a while. I'm in the final finale part of this human experience. And I think for me, I feel like my purpose is to go against it always has been to go against the grain. My husband would laugh and say to me, "You always say, who made that rule? Who made that rule?" And so I circle back to that challenge and the status quo and who made that rule. I just feel like, we're all these humans on this big blue marble, and can we find a way to do this differently and kind of break down these hard barriers that kind of keep us locked into not really seeing one another, hearing one another. And I know the love word, but it's true, right? It's really true. Trust and love are part of the gig. I mean, they really are. When it gets down to it, when you're at the end of your life, if you really want to, like, I can go to this darker place. When you're at the end of your life, what is going to really matter?
Yeah.
Steve Jobs gave a beautiful speech on that. He couldn't buy his life back at the end, right? So we all have to ask ourselves, what really matters deep down inside, what really matters. And I think connection, belonging, trust, these are the things, right? That if we take away all the other things, the external things, and we get down to the meat and potatoes of it, I think that's what we're all yearning for. That's what we really desire. And so, you didn't have to ask me.
I think he would have asked you
would
what
have.
your purpose is.
My purpose?
Yeah.
I do feel like my
That would have
purpose.
summed that up. Yeah.
Yeah, what is my purpose? And I think my purpose is to awaken humans to this experience. I do. I do that one-on-one. I do it for free and for fun. I do it for work and pay. I do it, right? It's important to me. And I think when my time is done, I think what I've been asked is, what legacy are you leaving? And I think that's my legacy, is that I did it when I ran the Dance Conservatory. I started the Dance Conservatory of Maryland in the Harper Ballet Company, for 15 years. And that was my premise always. The medium was that entity, but the purpose was connection, and what can we do for the good of the whole, and how can we cultivate the safety, the love, the connection, the belonging, and part of the team.
I think the love word is so important too. And I was joking with someone here not too long ago, and I was like, that's right, I'm using the L word at work.
In work.
I love these people, right? But and it makes people uncomfortable sometimes, but if anybody has looked up the number of hours we spend in a lifetime at work, the fact that love is not part of the conversation should give everyone pause, because we spend a lot of time with work humans, a lot of effort, a lot of life stages, a lot of events, right? How is love not part of the conversation, really, is the question, when that amount of time in somebody's life is dedicated to it. Mic drop.
We just had a very existential conversation here.
Best kind.
Well, it kind of ties into a theme I'm hearing a lot from my peer group, and that's about everyone wants to find their tribe. And it's that sort of mythical tribe of people out there that feel like you do, that act and think like you do, that you can express that love. But you have created a tribe at DTC, an enviable tribe. And I imagine anyone listening to this podcast is going to be curious about, how do I get a role at DTC? So I just applaud the two of you, and I applaud the CEO as well for understanding how critical this is for a group of engineers who are in a high stress, very complicated, complex environment, and having to deal with things very quickly, and having that ensconcement of security and safety to be able to speak up, to express yourself. So again, I'll probably layer the accolades on a little bit more, but I think it's remarkable. And Monica, I mean, everything, well, I shouldn't say everything, many things you say are so profound that I have to write them down and just reflect upon them. What else would you like to share? Because I'm sure you've got about 17 bulleted points there we haven't
Yeah,
covered yet in this
yeah,
conversation.
always,
So I'm just going to turn the
always.
microphone over to you to let you speak
Yeah.
a little bit.
No, no, I appreciate it. I think, again, I want to emphasize for sure that we are building the plane as we fly it. We're figuring it out as we go. We're learning lessons. None of us are doing this perfectly, including, I know the CEO would acknowledge, right? We're all humans. We're all working with our own personal development. We talk about it a lot. We have lots of hard conversations, so I think it's definitely, I mean, part of what I would encourage everyone is humility is a big important piece of it. As much as we want to impart to others, we also have to acknowledge what we don't know, and commit to learning ourselves, right? Commit to developing and learning ourselves. So that's a big one. I think, oh, what else is on my list here? I got a lot of stuff on my list. You know me well, Andrew. I think, the other questions I had here were kind of what, and I think this applies to organizations, but it applies in our personal lives. I could ask myself this question, like, what behaviors am I rewarding and incentivizing, right? What am I rewarding what am I rewarding and incentivizing for myself? But as an organization, what behaviors are truly being rewarded and incentivized? Because we're behavioral beings, right? So like, I think that's a question, a reflection question. And also, what resources am I dedicating to curiosity as an individual? And what resources are organizations dedicating time to around curiosity? I would ask any leader, what are they curious about? And what are they curious about within themselves, to Pam's point, So those were some of the other things I had in no particular order. They were just on my list. But, yeah, I think I just appreciate the time to have the conversation, because I think the more dialogue there is, and Pam Pam always says, what are your unanswerable questions, right? Like, not all questions have direct and concrete answers, but it's the asking, right? It's the asking that opens up curiosity and more dialogue. So I think that's an important piece of it too.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
This has been phenomenal. Before we wrap it up, Pam, are there any notes on your pad there that we have not expressed yet? I'll give you the microphone there for any last thoughts.
I think I wanted to just chime in on your tribe word, because I think we forget that we come from this indigenous culture way hundreds of years back. Like, tribal people, when they were just living in the land and with one another in small villages, right? They had that close connection. They just, it was there. And we now, in this modern world, we're very separated, right? By technology, by so much, really. And so there's this deep thing in each of us that's part of our human animal person that is made for that kind of connection, to be a part of the tribe, the herd, that's part of who we are. So when we're feeling, that loneliness and isolation and everything, the answer, and you might feel it in your gut, right? You feel that empty hollowness, right? Your stomach's growling, you're empty and hollow. Take a look at that, because that, for me, when that happens to me, I'm like, what? I'm not connecting with folks right now. I'm in isolation. I'm at the computer a lot. I'm doing these tasks and I'm not interfacing, right? And I feel that hollow feeling. That's embedded in all of us. It's in our DNA from hundreds of years ago of humanity. So can we be aware of that and understand it and be mindful of it and go, okay, I have to lead. I have to take some responsibility. I have to make a phone call. I have to ask for help. I have to interface. I have to connect. I think that's like real important for all of us. to understand that it's deeply embedded in us. It's not a broken thing. We're not wrong. We're not broken. It's there, and it's there for a reason. That creates safety. That creates trust, right? When we connect. In the tribes back in those old times, they stayed together in the wilderness to help one another survive the elements. Well, our survival now is in all these different elements in this modern world. And so, how do we connect? It's important. All this stuff that we're doing is about that. Whether it's our family at home or here at work, like we spend a lot of time here at work, Monica said, yes, we do. That's important.
Yeah, and now I can't help myself. One more thing. I'm
Okay,
sorry. And then I promise. I promise you
I just triggered
can
another
tell me I'm
thing.
done for the day. Okay. So, but yes, to the tribe point, because I do feel, bringing this back around to, okay, cybersecurity risk, the world we're living in, it's,
Exactly.
and Pam and I were in another meeting earlier where we're talking about, it's not a question of if, but when, right?
Right.
So if we accept that that's the reality of what we're living in, then when it really comes down to it, it's gonna be the strength of the tribe. It's gonna be the sense of loyalty and belonging
Yes.
that a tribe has to respond as a team, and resilience to bounce back, right? To gather and pivot and come up with a solution and to respond as a team. So that it does come full circle at the end of the day. And it's even more critical now than ever because of the environment that we are in and the level of threat that truly is out there, that we're not going to survive as individuals with everything that's going on. And now I will stop, I promise.
Thank you for wrapping it up.
You can keep on talking if you want, but and I appreciate you bringing it back to that point, because that's what I was going to go into next, is what does this have to do with cybersecurity? And for those of you who've listened to our earlier podcast on Just Culture, yeah, a lot of cyber criminals get in because of bad passwords or unpatched devices or things like that. But the trend line is for social engineered attacks. And if you have an organization that thrives on blame and fear and distrust, you're not going to report. If you've done something wrong or something is strange, you're just going to let it slide. With an organization like DTC, especially in the role that you're in as the guardian of many companies, crown jewels, having that safe environment to talk about these things is absolutely crucial. So, Monica, I appreciate you're bringing it back around to that as well. And I would encourage our listeners, if you haven't listened to either one of Monica's podcasts on Just Culture, pull those up. I think they are just brilliant. And for those of you out there who want to get more technical, you're going to love our next episode, because we have two of our engineers, Scott and Kevin, have developed a two-hour CPE course on cybersecurity awareness for specialty medical and dental offices, and they're going to be our guest on our next podcast. And for those of you who've forgotten what DTC does, we are one of the best outsourced IT managed service providers in the region. So if you are experiencing issues with your current provider, your computer systems, you just want a second set of eyes on them, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can find us conveniently at www.dtctoday.com, and we would love to hear from you. We'd love to have some feedback on this podcast as well. I know that Pam and Monica are not accustomed to getting fan letters, but I'm assuming that after this podcast, their mailboxes will be stuffed with all kinds of postcards and letters. Anyway, this is Andrew Rose, and I'm wrapping this up. Thank you so much for listening and tuning in today. Have a wonderful day.
Yeah, thanks, everybody.
We would love to hear from you. Please email us your questions or comments to ask.us@dtctoday.com. New episodes of Cyber Savvy are posted the second Tuesday of every month. For more detailed information, visit our website at dtctoday.com. Be prepared. Be cyber savvy.